In this episode, I'll be unboxing the recent Blu-ray release of City of God from Imprint Films. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast exploring storytelling on film, as well as interviews with industry professionals who work in film, television, theater, among other areas of the arts. For those of you who have not seen City of God, I will just read out a brief synopsis here on the back. In the streets of the world's most notorious slum, Rio de Janeiro's City of God, a frail and scared young boy will grow up to discover that he can view the harsh realities of his surroundings with a different eye. This was directed by Fernando Meirelles. The novel was by Paulo Lins, and the screenplay was by Braulio Mantovani. I hope I have some of these names somewhat pronounced correctly. This is a great film. I mean, truly a masterpiece. I actually, before I get into unboxing the Blu-ray here from Imprint Films, I saw this 20 years ago, believe it or not, in a religion class. I went to a Catholic high school, and our teacher wanted to show it to us, our religion teacher. And he had, back in the days when you couldn't stream movies and whatnot at this point, he asked if anyone owned a copy of it. And my friend in the class, who went on to be a filmmaker and who still is a very successful music video director, Tom Vucic. Shout out to Tom Vucic, who also has made some narrative short films as well, and among other things. Of course, he asked, does anyone own a DVD of City of God? And of course, Tom Vucic put his hand up. Here's a 16-year-old, and he owns City of God. He had a massive physical media collection. And the religion teacher, I remember, said, because apparently there's a Patrick Swayze movie with the same title. He's like, I'm not talking about the Patrick Swayze one. And Tom just was like, no, sir, I know what you mean. You're talking about the one from Brazil. So we watched it then. Tom brought it in and we watched it. When I watched it again, I wondered why I suppose for social consciousness, just so we can get a better idea and feeling for other realities, harsh, terrible realities that people face in other parts of the world. I imagine he wanted us to see it and expose us to it. But I mean, still, some of the content is some of it. A lot of it is shocking, and it's not it's not easy to see even as an adult. So it must have been hard for us as 16-year-olds to have seen it. 16 going on 17. So I only remember moments of it. I couldn't really remember much about it, but I always wanted to see it again, and what a perfect opportunity to get it on Blu-ray from Imprint Films, and they did a fantastic job. I just want to say a little something about the film, is that it really explores these slums. And like it says here, it's told mainly from the character. His name is Rocket, and it's mainly told through his eyes. But what's interesting is that he is the center of the film in a way, yet not, because it's a real ensemble piece. And for long stretches of time, he's not there, but he's sort of the core of it, and he's the one who that has the most hope in the end. He becomes a photographer. It was sort of humorous how he got his name out there as a photographer by getting access to take pictures of Little Z, who's like the head of one of the gangs, and how he goes on to, and it wasn't even intentional, to get those pictures in the newspaper. And there was something funny about how that was handled. But what's interesting is that you see him as a kid, and then you see him when he's older, but there are so many characters, and it's really told in a few different parts, because in the first part, the people who run the gangs, like Little Z, they are kids at the first part. I mean, it's a flashback. It begins at the end of the story, and then Rocket is goes back in time to tell the story from the beginning. And he talks about, they show these people as children, and as as horrible as a lot of these people turn out, it's very human. I mean, he does do it with the utmost empathy without shying away from how brutal they are. But they grow up in violence. The people are around them are violent. They're exposed to violence. They don't have much education. They don't have really good influences, and they're in poverty in the slums. And so the fact that they grow up to lead gangs or become drug dealers and will kill people the drop of a hat and feel no remorse is not surprising. And Little Z is certainly the worst, because you see some of them, like his partner, for example, was someone who had a little, he had more of a consciousness, so he had more of a moral center to him. But what's interesting is that at the beginning, the people robbing and stuff, they're not necessarily violent. They don't necessarily they're not trying to kill anyone. They're just trying to steal to get by. And it's really seeing how Little Z, who had this thirst for blood, how he, even as a child, started shooting people when the opportunity came. And if people crossed him, even as a child, he would kill. And so as he gets older, and him and his friends, they are the ones who now start to deal drugs. They see how much money is in cocaine. We also see every decade how things change a little bit. And cocaine becomes the new drug. They can make a lot of money at it. And it has this almost Scorsese-like feel to it, because Rocket is telling the story and he's talking about each character, and it starts at the end, and then it's a flashback to the beginning, sort of like in Goodfellas. Not that Goodfellas is exactly the end, but it starts maybe 3/4 of the way in, and then we go back to the story told in the past. Occasionally freeze framing on characters, and then talking about, we'll get back to this character in the voiceover narration. And just like in Goodfellas, you see how he would talk about how these criminals and gangsters went about their business, how they made money, how they worked, and all these kind of things. And you see that here, he really goes into it as much as he can, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like a documentary at all. I mean, it has quite a style. It's quite stylized. In the photography, it certainly has a dramatic heart to it. There's a lot of conflict, the character development, story. So it has a real Scorsese feel to it. And the middle of the film is sort of their Little Z, is their rise to power. And then how at the end everything just starts to get out of control. And what's interesting with Little Z is that he gets out of control over his own insecurities. And yeah, he has all this money, but he's so serious, he doesn't know how to have any fun. And he's a killer, and he'll kill at the drop of a hat, and he's all about business. Whereas his partner is, people like him a lot more. People find him fun to be around. He's got a girlfriend, and he doesn't want to kill anybody. I mean, he tells Little Z occasionally to not kill people if they did something wrong. And so I was quite fascinated by that. But then it's really going to this party where Little Z later on, because his partner decides to get out of this world and leave with his girlfriend. And he asks this woman to dance. And when she says, no, I'm with someone, here's a guy that if he feels any rejection, anything negative being, any kind of negative energy towards him, anyone he feels is wronging him, he reacts in a violent way. So immediately he goes to the boyfriend, who's this good looking guy, and he humiliates him. He then later on rapes his girlfriend, and he shoots up his house. And then we see how that guy, whose name Knockout Ned, that character, that he was just a guy trying to survive, not violent at all. And then he goes into this world to get back at little Z. So it doesn't always necessarily start at childhood, but again, it's done with the utmost empathy, because you can understand why this character, after some of his family members are killed, his girlfriend is raped, his house is shot up. You can understand. I could totally understand why he would think, I'm going to get back at this guy. And so then he goes in with one of the other rival gangs to get back at little Z, and that's how this whole war breaks out, and it gets darker and darker and darker. I was also fascinated by the fact that we see, like we saw with little Z as a kid, we see the other children witnessing the little Z getting older, growing to power, having all this money, and so that's what they think a man is. And so you see how the influence starts so young, and so once little, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, when little Z gets killed at the end, he gets killed by the kids. Because then he loses all his money. The police rob him, mug him when he was in a vulnerable position, and there's a bunch of kids circle him and kill him. They don't care about him, and then it's just sort of this endless cycle. Because then I thought it was really well done how at a certain point it's almost feels like a factory, almost like a conveyor belt, where all these things are going along, and then they're just done away with. It's just one after another, and so someone will now take his place, and it'll be these kids, because you see the kids at the end talking about murder, and I'm gonna kill this person, and you think, my God, these are children. So it's a rough watch. It's a tough watch, but it's really, really powerful. I mean, it will leave you, at least for me, it left me feeling stunned and really shook me up emotionally, and challenged me and provoked me like you want out of the best films. So, and all the actors they were mostly people from the slums in Brazil, and the director brilliantly worked with them. They're so convincing. They're the real deal. The performances are stunning. So how he was able to, it reminded me of the neorealism period, just getting the real people who know these environments to do it. And so how he got that out of them is really the talent of the director, and he worked with them. There's a featurette where he talks about that, which I'll get into. But just to get into the Blu-ray here, if you want to take a screenshot, there's the cover. Again, I love these Imprint Films. I love their artwork. You could take a screenshot there. I'll read out the features. I just want to talk about that image right there, because you see, again, the influence on the kids, and there's little Z there, and he's telling this kid with the gun to kill another kid. Because what happened was, in the slums, if anyone robbed anyone else in the slum, then they're gonna get killed. So these kids rob a store. The store owner goes to little Z, and then little Z's like, I'm gonna kill them. So he grabs two of them, and it's a brutal scene, because these kids who don't know any better, and they rob the wrong person, and then they got caught by little Z. And then he asks them first, where do you want to get shot? The hand or the foot? And they say the hand, and they're crying. And he shoots them both in the foot. And then he tells this kid to shoot one of them. And you see the kid really struggles, but then he does it. I mean, he's forced to do it. So you see how the cycle of violence is going to begin. That was probably, to me, the hardest scene to watch, to see these kids get murdered. It's brutal. You see the police corruption, like I mentioned. Little Z, later, he gets robbed by cops, and you see cops murder people, and God, it's really brutal. But at some of the features, so we have a conversation with Fernando Meirelles. I hope I have his name somewhat right. Fantastic filmmaker. So there's an interview with him, and so he talks about some of the things I mentioned, like, for example, the early parts of the film. If you look at the photography, it's brighter. It has more of an innocent quality to it. Yes, we're seeing people steal and rob, but they're not necessarily violent. They're just doing it because they feel that they have to. So, but there are some harsh things in the first part. So it's not so light, but even, I mean, I guess for the slums, it's as bright as one can be. So the photography has a brightness to it. And then the middle part, once we see Little Z and his partners rise to power, we the photography again changes. It's darker, but it still has a brightness to it because from their point of view, everything was great. They're making all this money, kind of like Scorsese would do. He would put you in the point of view of the characters. So if they're feeling great, no matter what they're doing, even if they're criminals, it's gonna have that kind of feel to it, look and feel to it. And then the third part, when things start to spiral out of control, there's hardly any color. I mean, it's just may as well have been a black and white film. The photography is so dark as the rise and fall of Little Z, I suppose. And so he talks about that, and like I said, working with people in the slums and the non-professional actors, which was really good. And then the documentary News from a Personal War is really, really good and very much like the film, but now it's a documentary. So it's even they're interviewing the real people living in the slums, the kids, the cops. There's more of an inside look into how these slums came to be, the corruption, and some of these interviews with these kids is hard to watch. I mean, one of them was talking about killing someone for the first time at 11, getting hired by a drug dealer to do it because this other person did something wrong, and lighting him on fire. And the journalist or the interviewer asked, "Well, how did that make you feel?" And he said, "Normal." He says, "As normal as I feel now." So again, they don't have a connection to people or feelings for people because they weren't taught it. And so the killing someone, and we see that in the film, killing someone is no big deal. And, we see the perspective from the police. There's even a real footage of shootouts happening in the slums. Some of these other kids, some of them are wearing masks, because they don't want people to see their face, and talking about how they barely know how to read. They went to grade 3. And things like that. And they go into the jails, talk to the people in the jails. And some of them want to help the community. And this is the best way they know how. They'll, I'll go rob rich people because they feel that that's the only option. So it's not just, they're not all just out for themselves. We see that in the film as well, to an extent. Not everybody is totally cold. There is a somewhat of a community feel to it, but the documentary goes more into those characters and those realities. But it's a harsh, and they just talk about people who just try their best to stay, who live in the slums, but to stay away from the violence. But to me, it seems like it's impossible, and it has this claustrophobic feel to it. They're all sort of tightly living together, which we see in the film. So again, the documentary is pretty tough to watch too, but it's brilliant. And it also has a theatrical trailer, 1080p high definition presentation by Paramount Pictures. We'll just go into the inside of the disc now. I won't spoil what the rooster was about. You'll see. That's another iconic image there, which opens the film and then ends the film. Beautifully done. We'll have our back here. I already read the features out, but if you want to take a screenshot just to read over it, feel free. And here's our inside. I'll pop the disc out for you so you can get. I love the images that they put. This is a powerful. I mean, you see, this is the actor playing Little Z when he was a kid, and you see how when he's shooting, he's smiling because he enjoys it. But that's a powerful image, and then I'll pop the disc back in if you want to take a look at the sticker. But I love this is a phenomenal release. It's a beautiful print, beautiful case, and we have it from IMPRINT Films. So I will leave the link in the description box below for where you can purchase it from IMPRINT Films. I highly recommend it. I want to thank Via Vision and IMPRINT Films for sending me a copy. I'm so glad I saw this movie again, and I love this film. So I highly, highly recommend, for all you physical media collectors out there, buy this and put it on your shelf. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Also, click the like button below and comment. Let me know what you think of City of God. And if you have this Blu-ray from Imprint Films, let me know what you think of the release. Thank you so much, everyone, and I will see you in the next episode.